Tom Quee and Sam Wiles present Down in the Hole, a Tom Waits podcast which explores and critiques, episode by episode, every album of the American artist. To find out more information about the show and the man himself, visit tomwaitspodcast.wordpress.com.
Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of Down in the Hole. Thank you for joining us. If you're new, if you're old, I'm Sam Wiles, and obviously I'm not here on my own. I'm with my good friend.
Yo, it's Tom Quee. Hey everyone. Thank you again for listening. We just thought we'd give Sam the intro reins there, and you pulled it off, man. That was...
I haven't gone completely wrong.
This is
so
a Tom
far.
Waits podcast. It is called Down in the Hole. You are Sam, I am Tom, and today we are looking at one of those albums that it's kind of like your childhood memories. It's like when you're a Tom Waits fan, you've been a Tom Waits fan for many years, you look back on Blue Valentine, and it might not be the one that you listen to all the time. You know, it's not your Mule Variations, it's not your Rain Dogs. But you remember it fondly. You know, you look back and you have good memories of it. But when you go back and when you interrogate what it is, the feelings become more bittersweet. I don't know if I'm wrong there, Sam.
For me, it was an album that exists purely because of the third track, and I think that might be the same for a lot of people. You pretty much... you were like, oh, okay, this album cover looks cool, this song is on it, let's have a look. And, you know, recently, I've kind of just gone back into this album thinking, you know what, I never really listened to it in the entire run-through at all once, but I've seen that it is probably the most solid of his early albums as a whole, but only in the sense that I really don't hate any of the songs. But,
right, I would say it's one of the least solid, but
not disliking songs does not a classic album make, you know.
No, true, and it's definitely not bad. But I think before we dive into Blue Valentine, it's worth noting that here at Down in the Hole, here at Tom Waits Podcast, we are constantly trying to broaden our interaction with fans. Ultimately, we want this podcast to act as a kind of dialogue between people who are really into Tom Waits. And I'm really happy to say that is happening, like, you know, pretty much every day. It's doing really well. Mainly it's happening through our Twitter. You can follow us at TomWaitsPodcast. That's at TomWaitsPodcast, just one word altogether. And we're coming up to 300 followers, which, I mean, I know is such a sort of non-humble brag because it's such a minuscule number compared, you know, especially compared to Mr. Tom Waits, who I believe has like 219,000 followers. So it's pretty huge. But on there, we don't blog spam you with the podcast or whatever. We just normally will put up some Tom Waits facts or ask questions or post some cool YouTube stuff or interviews and stuff. One of the things I found recently was... a breakdown by Tom himself of The Guardian in like 2006. It must have been like the Orphans press tour or something. And he breaks down his 10 favourite albums or his 10 albums that have really affected them. And it's a really good read. It's not Tom trying to mislead you as he normally is or pull some sort of verbal, you know, pranks. It's just him talking about albums that he likes. That's a really good read. So, follow us at Tom Waits Podcast. You can also get in contact with the podcast, tomwaitspodcast@gmail.com.
We've been having some great interaction from that recently. I've just got an email here we got from Chad Jukes last week, I believe. It was a great little email. Said some beautiful things about small change, but I just want to read this part he had on Foreign Affair, which we covered last week.
Yes, so if you want to hear our full Foreign Affair review, song by song, episode 5.
Yeah. You can find us on YouTube and iTunes, obviously.
Yes.
Chad Duke says here, A Foreign Affair is not my favourite album, but it does have some great tunes. Barbershop and Muriel are probably in my top 10 of all time. Jack and Neil, Burma Shave and Foreign Affair are solid, but over the years I've found that I don't miss them. A Sight for Sore Eyes and I Never Talk to Strangers seem to be the more popular tracks on the album, but I also find them okay. Perhaps I've just heard them too many times over the last 24 years that I've been a Tom Waits fan. Best wishes, guys. And he obviously says some rather flattering stuff in the early part of the email.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, we just have to say thank you again, Chad.
It's very flattering.
It's surreal, really, to get correspondence with people, and we're so happy that people are enjoying the pod and listening to them. You know, you can hear our Foreign Affairs wrap up last week. We did go in depth with the album, and I found myself surprised, actually. I kind of maligned the album, in memory at least. But when I went back, I found that it was quite a varied journey. I think far more varied than Blue Valentine, which is where its strengths lie. Blue Valentine is a little bit monotonous in theme sometimes.
Like, I know we never mean to get too meta with this podcast, but do you think there could be a certain risk in the fact that obviously when we do the research for this, we do end up listening to these albums so many times over and over, and do you think it's impossible to not fall in love with certain songs if you just hear them over and over again?
I have thought that.
Are we overexposed?
Yeah, I have thought that as a more generalised question. Like, I was like, I used to have this imaginary as a kid. Like, what if I was on some? What if me and you had to drive across America? You know, so we're driving for days upon days upon days, and we only have one shitty Bon Jovi CD, like like mid-90s Bon Jovi, not even like Guitar Hero. Hair metal Bon Jovi, like really terrible, boring rock Bon Jovi. We'd eventually love that album, even if that album had 1 star. You would just, you know what I mean? You'd grow fond of it. But I think with Tom, the craft is there. Like, this is a guy who knows what he's doing, and sometimes the songs take off, and sometimes they don't. And I think Blue Valentine struggles with, I would argue, especially the second side. I mean, we'll get into this later in the analysis as we get onto the songs. But just as a point, I would argue that songs like Wrong Side of the Road, Whistling Past the Graveyard, Romeo's Bleeding, and A Sweet Little Bullet, they all share this same kind of sleazy blues DNA.
They are kind of the same song, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, to say they're exactly the same song is right. I think Whistling Past the Graveyard definitely sticks out. It's got more ambitious rhythms going on. But yeah, they can get into this malaise. But just as we close off here as well, so podcast at TomWaitsPodcast is probably the best way. Please get in contact with us as well. Lots of Tom Waits stuff there. The email at TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com. And finally, if you are listening by subscribing, by downloading, it would be incredible if you could leave a review for us on iTunes. We've learned recently that that's very important. If you get enough stars, you accumulate them through people voting. You get an average rating, which really helps in the kind of algorithmic searchings of the podcast. And also maybe even just leave a little single sentence review or something, just to help sway people. We're not doing this podcast for viewers. We're not doing this for downloads. But as I said in the opening, we just want to reach as many fans as possible. And we have been.
Speaking of fans, just one last little note. I'd just like to give a little shout out to a guy who will be appearing on our show.
Of course.
Is this 6 weeks?
6 weeks, late December, yeah.
Yes, on our Rain Dogs album. It's a pretty big album, so we'll need some help. His name is Danny O'Gorman. He's our in-house artist and fellow Tom Waits fan.
Yes, Danny designed our thumbnail, our Down in the Hole thumbnail.
Excellent thumbnail.
Yeah, I love our thumbnail as well. I mean, I know I'm going to love our thumbnail, but I genuinely do. I remember disliking it when I first saw it, but I'm a very kind of contrarian reactionary, so I think I just wanted to make a point and stand on my feet. But
fans
it's brilliant.
Will probably be able to tell that by now.
Duh.
Danny, he's out in Malta at the moment doing a work placement, so we just can't wait to.
And the guy's Tom Waits knowledge is as good as ours.
So no! And his uncle pretty much bought him the entire discography on CD for like one Christmas. He was so lucky. It was great.
That's such a great present.
Yeah,
that's such a nice present to buy someone the entire discography of someone on CD. It's just brilliant. So with that, we shall jump into
Blue Valentines,
1978's Blue Valentines.
Do you want to, Tom? Would you like to give us a bit of the sort of context for this album?
Well, as we reached Waits at this point, this is someone who has been releasing albums year after year after year, which is quite incredible, really. I mean, we mentioned this a few times in the podcast, the like wild productivity of songwriters in the 70s and 80s. Like, I mean, it stems from a certain sense. Maybe the mold is the Beatles, who released unbelievable album after unbelievable album, breaking new ground every year. It was kind of crazy.
Sometimes twice a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. It's still unfathomable how much they did, and Tom's similar. I mean, this is his 6th album, so we started with Closing Time, and then we got all the way to Blue Valentine. And obviously, he's changed a lot, and these changes aren't only in the music. There's a lot of stuff going on in his personality. Tom has recently started acting, which is a kind of classic bit of trivia. What was Tom's first starring role? He plays Mumbles, a background pianist. His role, apparently, he was on set for a few days. This was Sylvester Stallone's directorial film.
I'm pretty sure it was 5 weeks' work for 3 lines of dialogue.
Yeah, I believe in the Barney Hoskins book it says that Tom saw the premiere and he didn't even see himself in it, like he was a blink in it.
Oh,
so
really?
It was, yeah, and so we have Tom acting, Tom branching out in that way. We also have Tom getting into more explicitly musicals. He's working at this time on a movie musical with the lyricist Paul Hampton, who was sometimes partner of Burt Bacharach. and the working title was quite a nice title, very Tom Waits title. Why is the dream always so much sweeter than the taste? And
That's a long title.
That is a long title. Waits referred to this as an opera. And basically, it was a very kind of Beat Generation kind of narrative. The idea was two friends are reunited on New Year's Eve in the Orange County town of Torrance. And these friends are Jack Farley Fairchild, who is a used car dealer, obviously. I mean, it has to be.
This
and
is the most Tom
Donald,
thing ever.
Yeah, Donald Fedor, who was his partner and sidekick. And this is something that, you know, Hoskins, again, Riley points out quite rightly, that this is yet another mutation of the double act that Tom Waits is so fascinated by. On Foreign Affairs, we had Jack and Neil, Jack Kerouac and Neil Cassidy. We also have, Tom and Chucky Wise himself. You know, they are another sort of dynamic duo. And later in Tom's music, we have, you know, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. Less prevalent, obviously, but a big influence, that kind of duo back and forth. And, you know, maybe in a sense, Tom is reaching out for a partner, and obviously in Kathleen he eventually gets that and makes the greatest music of his career. So but basically this musical, nothing happened with it. It never went anywhere, and it effectively laid the seeds for a lot of One from the Heart, which is the thing he did with Francis Ford Coppola. But what we have is not only these changes in musical and in terms of acting, but explicitly in his music too. Waits would say in an interview prior to Blue Valentine, he would say, quote, "If I have to write one more song about booze and being drunk and all that, I'm going to throw up." At the time, he was renting a little room on Sunset at Van Ness, and he was writing songs pretty much explicitly on guitar.
There is a distinct guitar sound on this album. There's a lot of electric, which is nice as well, because especially with Closing Time and Nighthawks, it was relegated to kind of that Joe Phantom acoustic plicking. It's just a lot dirtier. Like
it is
like his life, really.
Yeah, and it's just he kind of picks up on that, really, saying that this is what he says. I quote: "I think for a while I had a cartoon romance with Tim Pan Alley, which is obviously kind of the famous songwriters kind of piano kind of area. But he says, but it was actually rather rigid for me. I wrote primarily at the piano, and you write a certain kind of song at the piano." Which is very true, really, you know. And so Blue Valentine is definitely establishing new terrain for Tom. I have to say that the guitar is still behaving in a Tom Waitsy way. Like, he's not kind of letting the guitar take the lead, ignore the pun. But you know what I mean? He's not ascribing to the rock and roll aesthetic at all. He's kind of incorporating it. But
yeah, I think it was interesting what you were saying about he was trying to branch out and find other people to work with in that sort of dynamic duo sense, because I don't think Tom ever really masters the solo.
No.
And there's a solo very late on this album that I really think demonstrates that quite clearly.
But and it's just interesting who makes up this band. We've been tracing the musicians that Tom has used.
We've lost a big player now, haven't we?
Jim Hugart is the last man standing. He's still in this album. This is Jim Hugart, whose bass lines you hear all over Tom, but it's probably most prevalent in stuff like Step Right Up, Diamonds at My Windshield, those sort of things. Barbershop, which is not a very good song, but there's Jim's bass is in there. So Jim himself was quoted talking about the album, and he said that, quote, maybe in reference to the ever-changing players apart from Jim, he says, quote, "Maybe Tom felt a bit more at ease around me. Drummers and saxophone players change, but I was the one consistent member of the recording unit from beginning to end." Unfortunately, Jim only features on 2 tracks on this album, on Blue Valentine. Ultimately, what Waits wanted was a blacker feel for the album. So he booked a primarily black musicians to play in his band. He booked drummer Ricky Lawson, guitarist Roland Bautista, and someone who had worked with Herb Cohen, George Duke, who, because of some sort of music union dispute, I'm not quite sure, but it's kind of this exists in screenwriting as well, where you can't you have to play under certain labels, or you have to do under certain names. So basically, George Duke, on the actual record himself, on the actual sleeve, he is referred to as De Willy Gonga, to avoid musical union detection. And Tom, summing this all up, summing his band up, he says, quote, "They're all Negroes. I'm the only spot in the group." So I've never really heard "spot" as a white reference before.
I've never heard that as a phrase. No.
No, but you immediately know what he means.
It's odd that you kind of can't ignore this change, because obviously most people will go straight to Swordfish Trombones as the big leap. But as we'll see with songs, especially like Red Shoes at the Drugstore, that there are hints that he is definitely seeking a different sound now. Like, he doesn't want to be this stereotype that he's kind of cultivated for himself, almost by himself. So he's having to sort of pay the price for that now. And I do like that he is being forced to take his music in this other direction.
Yeah, and you know, he again, speaking before the album was released, he kind of picks up on that idea of kind of, you know, progression.
Yeah.
And he essentially he's taking in Blue Valentine, the centre is the same centre as Closing Time and Heart of Saturday Night and Nighthawks. It is the street, it is the people, what goes on at night, what happens. But whereas Closing Time and Heart of Saturday Night, and obviously Nighthawks more explicitly, were more comedic, they played up the absurdity of the environment rather than the abject horror. This Blue Valentine ploughs a much darker furrow. You know, he says, quote, "There's more blood in this record, probably more detective-type stories. It just comes from living in LA, hanging out where I hang out. I kind of feel like a private eye sometimes. I'm just trying to give some dignity to some of the things I see without being patronising or maudlin about it." So, Tom, you're not trying to be maudlin about it. Why did you open the album with Somewhere?
Somewhere is a wonderful reminder that no matter how many changes Tom will go through, he will never avoid schmaltz where he can fit it in.
No.
I really dislike the original Bernard Herrmann version from the film. Have you seen the film?
You know what? I've never seen that.
You know what? Don't watch it. The documentary about the recording of the music's way better. So I'll just say that my parents are quite famously obsessed with it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I know a lot of people feel that this song as an album opener is kind of what we may have thought about like Cindy's Waltz, or what you may have thought about Tom's Trauberts, but I really like Somewhere.
Yeah, it's definitely not bad. I mean, it's just it's just a bit of an eye roll when you hear it, and you're like, oh god, for the past 3 albums now, he's opened with this schmaltz.
Well,
like,
not to use a new element of the show to my advantage already, but I know that Danny really likes this song as well.
Okay.
We've sung it together
keep him out of it.
on many drunk nights before. Yeah. But this song, like, I find that the subject matter is so fitting that if I hadn't been told that Tom Waits hadn't have wrote it, I would have no reason to assume that he hadn't. It is everything that I want to hear from a Tom Waits ballad.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely when I because doesn't it say from West Side Story in the brackets? Yeah, so it's quite explicitly telling you that, and I think obviously most people will probably know it as well. My ignorance of the song. You always knew then that it was West Side Story.
Yeah,
song.
I saw West Side Story when I was like 5 or 6.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
musicals are quite big. It is quite a ballsy move to cover a song from such a famous musical as it is, like one from the 50s. Like a lot of the more famous ones came from the late 60s. It declares kind of something very personal from Tom, which is something he always does. I believe he is just quoted as kind of more blasé, in a more blasé fashion, just saying, "I just always wanted to play that song."
Yes. He says, he says, quote, he said, "I've always wanted to sing that song," and this is in conversation with Bob Alcivar, who was doing the strings, and Bob said, "I said, how are we going to do it?" And then Tom said, "Why don't you pretend that I'm Frank Sinatra and you write what Nelson Riddle would write?" And it was perfect. Nelson Riddle, I assume, was a Sinatra arranger. TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com or at TomWaitsPodcast if you want to amend that. The song... It's quite edifying. It's quite nourishing. Tom's voice sounds excellent on this. There's no doubt about that, and it makes sense. Whilst it is a schmaltzy intro, if you work retroactively backwards through the album, it kind of makes sense because the landscapes that he's showing are so populated by hucksters and prostitutes, and
it's almost like a bit of a
it's an escape.
Well, just some medication just before you go into this dark world.
And I love the kind of. Tom Waits is so full of places and street names and barmen, but this is just Somewhere.
Yes.
This is just a kind of imaginary escape, an existential oasis that can kind of provide relief to this industrial kind of, the situations he finds himself in. I like the way the piano responds to certain things that he says, and I really like the way he delivers the "Will Valentine." Yeah, it's real. It's like he's proper like revving up on the voice. The voice is excellent. The song, I never disliked the song, and I think out of that holy trilogy of Tom Waits, Schmaltz, Cine Waltz, Traubert's Blues, Somewhere. Somewhere's probably the best track of those three for me.
Like, there are, just as a quick point, it's if you don't know, on this podcast we do film reviews, and what I did notice that this film is a rather nice parallel to the film that we will be reviewing later. Obviously, coming from West Side Stories, it's a story of street gangs, and we will be reviewing a similar film, which will be Francis Ford Coppola's Rumblefish, which is one of Tom's first bigger roles. The thing with Somewhere is it's his voice at its real peak. Like, at this point, he's reached a point where he knows how to do this so perfectly. He knows that distinct sound juxtaposes well, and it's obvious that he does need to go somewhere different. And I do feel he's like, he knows how to do this so well. He's not almost challenged anymore. But it's just the arrangements are kind of nice, though, as they're not as overdone as things maybe a Foreign Affair. The trumpet's also pretty enjoyable. What is kind of cool is that it's the only single off the album.
Oh, okay.
And it predictably bombed as well. Like, I don't know who thought that this was the most commercial song off the album at all. I guess
just because it's just got that
Somewhere
cultural significance, hasn't it? Maybe less so at the time. But yeah, Somewhere as an opener, it has me scratching my head really. When Red Shoes by the Drugstore would be the best opener to this album. Like, put Somewhere at the back and take Blue Valentines out, because I love the charging, like, Viking drums that take us in, that weird, like, diaspora magical piano that you're never sure what's going to come out of it. Like, it feels almost like it's alive.
The whole song's a mystery. You're not quite sure what the instruments are.
No,
you're not quite where it's going to go. The atmosphere is probably the best that he's done up until this point, easily.
I probably agree. Yeah, actually, I think it's so evocative of this street thing. I think one of the reasons is he's piling on the little motifs, but not really giving you a chance to appreciate where they hang in the rhythm. So we have the drums, then like a second later you have that piano, and then you have that little single note that's strangled as the bass like lumbers forward beneath it, like, you know, and you're kind of finally you find yourself in this groove, and it's irresistible. Like, it's so nice. And then Tom just comes in with a red shoe. It's like, what the, you know, it's just a sound like
this is his most theatrical song as well, like, and like his acting ability definitely does help this. Like, and you might, like, even though people maybe not think that's the best song off the album, in terms of sound, it is the standout track.
It's remarkable, really. It's especially if you engage with Tom in his later career and go back to explore. This is probably the first time you're like, oh, okay,
that's
here he
where
is.
It started.
Yeah, like, here's Tom, here's old Tom.
This is patient zero for Spidey's Wild Ride. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely.
like the way he sings root beer, like, it just grabs your heart. It's great.
The way his voice will go kind of similar to Bet on Strangers, like, go really fast and then explode to it with, like, you know, change your station, the still a diamond ring. It just kind of compacts.
But it never feels as forced as that, though, obviously.
No, and just like the whole song is just like onion peeling back these really interesting layers. Like, listen to that guitar. That guitar is just one note going tick, 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 the whole song. But it's just, it adds the layering's expert on this song. You know, his voice works so well. This is a new form of music, you know, and the fact that the piano responds to him again in really interesting ways when he goes like, you know, Santa Claus is drunk,
or the dogs bathe the moon, and there's that high pitched electronic organ, and it's so dreamlike.
It is, and it's fantastic, really. And I mean, you don't, obviously there is a sort of, you know, there's a story going on here. There's kind of like, I mean, the songs in Blue Valentine almost feel mythic in the sense that they're cyclical. They're always about people trying to get above their station and being pushed back by the harsh reality of the law and the street. And, you know, in this case, Caesar's been caught and he's left his girl waiting. You know, that sort of thing. We're not looking for that. What's gripping here is the musical landscape. And when we finally get what you guess you could call a chorus, the "Meet Me Tonight," you know, it's really nice to hang on to. But even that isn't around long, and then we just have Tom just going red shoes, as we kind of fade out. But the song isn't ending. We're just leaving it.
I like that.
Yeah. It's kind of true though, because it doesn't end like as most Tom Waits songs have up to this point. They've traditionally kind of ending on a chord or kind of swanned out or whatever. But this one just kind of like, we fade out, but you can still hear it going on.
I do like it that it kind of leaves you hanging like that. Obviously, Caesar's never been this late before, and obviously we can assume the worst. But
yeah. I love the burglar alarm snitching on Caesar.
Oh.
Brilliant, love that.
And obviously, we can't ignore the very sort of in-your-face image of the red shoes as that returning motif. It's almost like obsessive. And
just the idea of rain splashed the nickel and spilled like Chablis all along the midway. Really nice.
The lyricism is pretty fucking insane.
The lyricism is fantastic in this song. I think that later songs on this album suffer because Tom's writing quite stock stuff.
He's blown his load, it seems.
Yeah, I think Red Shoes. Yeah, it's a weird track, isn't it? It's kind of like it's not that obviously memorable, but I do find myself just singing bits of it to myself, and like I think the mood. I've got to keep coming back to that mood. That opening groove that he establishes, that he peels back, is just
with an electric bass as well for the first time, which is nice. I actually heard this song first off Big Time.
Okay.
Which is actually and it's the earliest song featured on that live album. So like going back to your point earlier about like this is the sort of the
that's very
start.
telling, isn't it?
Yeah, like he's very clear about that. Like,
to be fair though, I can't imagine any Step Right Up maybe, but that's kind of almost too beaty, isn't it?
This is like the beta of the next album, Heart Attack and Vine, which obviously goes into that more heavy, grimy sound. This is a great little. It is probably my favourite song. Actually, I'm going to say it quite early on. I really like it.
2 songs in,
I can't avoid it. I'm trying to hold back my real enjoyment for this song, but coming back to this album, I didn't malign it to one side at all. But I was just like, oh yeah, Red Shoes. I was like, oh shit, this is so good.
Yeah, it is a definite standout. But I think fair enough though. To Tom, we do go on to another standout, Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis.
Obviously, like I say, this album exists for me because of this song. Yeah. I don't think anyone would disagree with me on any level that it's widely regarded to be one of Tom's all-time greatest songs. Wow. It's probably arguably his deepest and wholest penetration into inhabiting the soul of another person. This song can make you cry if you are in that place. Yeah. And it's probably some of the most haunting lyrics I've ever heard. It's the only song I think that has a spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's astonishing. I absolutely adore this song. One of the things that always stuck with me going back to this song, I mean, this is a kind of a sort of an axiomatic reference that no one will really get, but a friend of ours, Andy, who we mentioned on the podcast before, massive Tom Waits fan, got me into Tom Waits. I remember I was around his house once and we were listening to Blue Valentine, and this song came on, and his girlfriend, who I won't mention, but who I'm talking about, she always disliked Tom Waits in any form, not just because he was screamy. She just didn't like Tom Waits. She didn't like Martha. She didn't like How It's Saturday Night. But I remember him saying she loved this song. He said this is one of her favourite songs, and it kind of broke through whatever Tom Waits biases you have, and you can't deny this song. And that's always stuck with me. Listen to this song, and it's so true. Like, I mean, even before the lyrics start, I love the piano. The fact that this is, Tom's using that electric piano that he'd so scolded when he supported Zappa all those years ago, climbing onto it on stage, and the piano plays over itself. It twinkles and twinkles new melodies and little more melodies in the nooks and crannies of the keys, like the great moogie tone. It feels classic, but he feels different.
Yeah. He's as playful on the piano as he was live in Nighthawks.
And Tom is all about inhabiting character and taking on new guises. And that opening lyric, "Hey Charlie, I'm pregnant," like, well, I think such a break.
I think we should get into just how there are many ways that you can look at this song. You can literally say this, Tom is singing as the woman. You could say he's singing. He is Charlie reading the letter. Or you could say that Tom is reading the letter that she sent to Charlie, but it never actually got to him. And I think there's so many layers of different types of tragedy that this song could be viewed
right.
from.
I actually never thought that he was playing Charlie reading the letter, but that's such a good point. Yeah, it's a terrific song. I mean, we'll go through the lyrics. I was always interested by the second line, the reference to Euclid Avenue, which I I know that,
well, it's not a Tom Waits song without a place, is it?
Exactly. And I know that it was. I know that maybe Euclid Avenue is as common as fucking Roman Road or something in the UK. But Euclid, I was interested in that because of like Euclidean mathematics and the kind of throwback to the Greeks and stuff. So I did a bit of research, and I think it's a subtle joke on Tom's part, although it might be a very common road name. So any American fans can hopefully correct to this at TomWaitsPodcast. He referenced Euclid Avenue. This is what I got from Wikipedia. Euclid Avenue received nationwide attention from the 1860s to the 1920s for its beauty and wealth, including a string of mansions that came to be known as Millionaires Row.
Oh, wow.
Euclid Avenue, by the way, is a street in Ohio, Cleveland. I'm not sure if it's a straight reference in my part or just incidental, but so the song is basically this hooker sending this thing out to Charlie, and Charlie, we learn, is just one of a string of lovers. We hear about Mario as well. So there's been other people involved, and it's her describing, it's her essentially escaping and sort of thinking of elsewhere and thinking of other things. And a lot of the images are really tragic, like, the Hey Charlie quote, I think I'm happy for the first time since my accident, and I wish I had all the money we used to spend on dope, which is quite nice. But just the idea of having a used car lot, and driving one every day just to escape, and it's such a rich image, really.
Yeah, I always found it was interesting that dope was mentioned twice in the song, and I think it's kind of those warning flashes that maybe this isn't quite. I've always loved the unreliable narrator, and Tom executes it here. 10 out of 10, A star. Like it's so perfect. Like the fact that he's broadened his subject matter by projecting himself into these other people, and just giving us these different human impressions.
I definitely do think this song could be like taken apart by like a GCSE A-level English class, and I think they'd have fun doing it. It's a fun little world to incorporate. I like that all of the verses, aside from the second one, start with "Hey Charlie" as well.
Yes.
So "Hey Charlie" is said 5 times throughout as well, and. It's mentioned as more as well in the verses themselves. And again, like, we can point out moments in every Tom Waits song where we love the way that he delivers a certain line. I love the way he delivers, "I need money to borrow to pay his lawyer."
Yes.
Like,
the standout delivery is "Someone stole my record player." How do you like?
Yeah.
I'm welling up thinking about it when I listen to it for the first time.
Yeah, and it's just kind of the final line when the reveal that she's in prison, blah blah. But I'll be eligible for parole come Valentine's Day, so I'm not coming out Valentine's Day. Like, that's just the day when I know when maybe I'll get out. So it's just even more uncertainty,
and it's so bittersweet, isn't it? Like,
are you to believe this? Is she making some sort of romantic appeal to you, like, oh, Valentine's Day, that's when I'm out, sort of thing, or that's when maybe you should think of me if you're lonely on Valentine's Day, blah blah blah. There's a lot of kind of, at first, what seems like she's being sincere and appealing to you and Charlie. You're aware that maybe there are quite a few things here that are kind of like, using you yet again. She needs money, she needs relief.
The saddest part of the song for me might actually just be the fact that he don't play no trombone either.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's the loss of that cute little image is just as tragic as not even having the husband in the first place. And it's also great that his voice is singing as this frail sort of helpless woman as well, with this Tom growl.
Yeah, I agree. His vocal delivery is absolutely A-class in this. Raspy, emotional. I love the second verse as well when the hooker is speaking about her person, and she just keeps repeating he. So he says that he loves me. He says that he'll raise me. He gave me a ring that was worn by mother. He takes me out dancing, and then you learn that he doesn't exist, and it's really sad that these are the little fancies that she's constructed, very domestic ones, very simple ones, not dope riven, just kind of, she just wants someone to take care of her and take her out dancing. It's very sad.
I think one of the things that anyone who's listening to Tom in any depth can quickly pick up on is how instantly relatable you find yourself to these characters from just his ability to pick out the little things that work in real memory. Like just like the talking about a like just that specific record, Little Anthony and the Imperials, like you would remember that with one person specifically.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like your own memories. Like you really get into that person so well. Like it is. This song could be released entirely without music and just exist as poetry.
Yeah, but the synthesis of the two is marvelous. So we move on to another character-based song. I mean, Tom isn't inhabiting this character, but I mean, it's all about one person, as Christmas Card is. Romeo Is Bleeding.
This is the kickoff of what's known as the hi phase of Tom's career. It's very short-lived. It's like he was trying to get a catchphrase for the studio, and it just no one picked up on it. I'm glad no one responded to it. And it is kind of like just a nice little time capsule of Tom at this time. Obviously, this is one of those, like as you were saying in the little context bit earlier, this is very much about him living in this area at the time. In 1979, Waits says, most of the stories on Blue Valentine took place in Los Angeles in the last few months. Romeo Is Bleeding is about a Mexican gang leader who was shot and died in a movie house in downtown LA. And obviously, Tom has just seen this story. He knows the truly dramatic irony of the narrative and knows it's instantly compelling. It's equally just as pessimistic, for his type of storytelling, and he just picks it, turns it into a song, and I think it just tells a fantastic story.
It does honestly, like, it sounds quite long, and it doesn't really have a chorus hook, or it doesn't really have like the traditional Tom things to grip onto. But when you start listening to the lyrics are absolutely fantastic. Like, I love the idea that our sort of protagonist is he's been shot by Tom. Which is great. This character says, quote in the song, he says, he ain't, in reference to Romeo, he ain't never going to see another summertime for gunning down my brother and leaving him like a dog beneath a car without his knife. And the whole song is Romeo's been shot. Romeo's trying to be Romeo. He's trying to go on his way. And it's all about, I love the constant references to, so it says, Romeo's bleeding, but not so much as you notice. He's over on 18th Street as usual, looking so hard against the hood of his car. Also, Romeo's bleeding, but nobody can tell. He sings along with the radio with a bullet in his chest. He's just, it's the ultimate tough guy. He's so cool. He's, Rumblefish, touching this later, I think Danny Zuko, these are so unfazed that it doesn't even matter. He's just going to keep going on.
I actually didn't realise until quite recently that he was actually bleeding at all. I never actually quite got it until I actually sat down and read the lyrics. But the story to me is just so weird. Like it's really cool though, because it conveys friendship perfectly. Again, the things we're going to be talking about later, that sort of hit that dangerous hero worship, machismo, and then it's all backed up what I think's quite a really good rhythm actually. Tom's voice is great. The guitar sound is a little more muted here, but in the next song it's a little more obvious with the sort of guitar sound he's going for. But that bass line just struts as arrogantly as the eponymous Romeo.
Yeah, this is another break, isn't it? Like Red Shoes. This is another step in the next direction.
Like with the organ like pipping away, like I really feel like he hadn't done a track like this up until this point in his career, and maybe that's why to me it always feels so fresh looking back.
It is really fresh actually. This is a really good song. Like you were talking about the lyrics, and I do agree that when I was first listening to it, I didn't quite get what was going on, but I think my way into the song was one of the final things when it says Romeo's bleeding as he gives the man his ticket. He climbs in the balcony at the movies and he'll die without a whimper. So the fact that he dies watching Cagney on screen, like that image stuck with me, and then you sort of trace it back. You're like, oh shit, no, this is the guy singing shot Romeo, and he's recapping Romeo's final moments. And as Romeo, like, I love the end. Romeo's bleeding. Hey man. I almost think that those hey man are like his crew. He's bleeding, like shit. They wouldn't even have noticed.
Yeah, there's also the great little. Obviously, we haven't really talked about Tom's childhood that much. Obviously, we will be forced to in Kentucky Avenue later, but obviously he went to Mexico a lot with his dad, and his dad was really into Mexican and Spanish music, and there's a bit where Tom speaks in Spanish at the bottom.
Yes. And
the translation literally transcribes to, "Come on, let's go. Hey jerk, I'll take you on. Give me that pistol, man. You son of a fucking whore. Oh, what a fucking wimp. Let's go to sleep, man.
Oh, okay. So Romeo is Romeo till the end, really.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm thinking, is that what Romeo said to the policeman? Give me that pistol.
Well, because seeing as we haven't heard Romeo yet, if you know what I mean, so that would maybe make sense that Tom inhabits the Romeo character, and he has a really nice instrumental break in here as well. It kind of the sax kind of bursts out, and
you could say it's a little long.
It is probably a little long, yeah.
Like, I know we try and embargo our opinions as much as each other prior to an episode's recording as much as possible.
Yeah.
But things get leaked from time to time. Yeah. Snow, and I know that you're not really a big fan of this song, and I don't really know what your main reason for not liking it really is.
Yeah, maybe just length. I think I get a little bit bored in it. I think because I know the story, and it's not like a Tom Waits song where he just gives you images to chew on. He's just sort of feeding you this narrative. I just feel a little less compelled by it. Although it has definitely grown on me, and I love the I don't want to use the word urban. That's such a lame word to use to describe it, but you know what I mean. Like, it gets that sort of sense of that kind of
that dirty cityscape.
Yeah, like you could imagine someone watching a Cagney cinema film, and and they talk about.
Have we heard Cagney before in another song?
She looks like Rita Hayworth, isn't it, in Burma Shave?
No, she looks like Rita Hayworth. Invitation to the Blues.
Invitation to the Blues, you're right, sorry, there you go. And then there's a line I like when they're in the milk truck. So Romeo
as
says...
it breaks, he grabs his nuts.
Yeah, hey man, give me a cigarette. And they all reach for their pack, which is a good image. And Frankie lights it for him and pats him on the back and throws a bottle at a milk truck. And as it breaks, he grabs his nuts. They all know they could be just like Romeo if only they had the guts. The irony probably being that Romeo's guts are spilling out at this point. That's probably Tom purposely doing that. He's incredibly smart like that. But I haven't really got too much to say on this song. It kind of glides past, and it's a fun number, but it's indicative of a lot of the later Blue Valentine. After these incredible, statements of Red Shoes and Christmas Card, we lapse into Tom just kind of more experimental, trying to get comfy mode, and we get songs like $29, Sam. Well,
Well, two things. One, if you're going to talk about length being a negative point in a song, you're in the right place. And two, like I said in the sort of teaser at the end of Foreign Affairs, $29 breaks what I like to call the perfect run that Blue Valentine for me has from songs 1 to 4. And again, $29 is a annoyingly mediocre Tom Waits song. It's not particularly bad. It is not particularly good. And it feels like it's retreading a lot of the same ground as the past 4 songs, really. Like, the way it focuses on a specific snapshot image of the alligator purse feels like very Red Shoes, and then just the sound is just some more generic blues, really. I think most people would struggle to find any strong feelings about it either way, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like I like blues music. Specifically, I like blues guitar music, like Stevie Ray and Gary Moore and Allman Brothers and shit like that. Like, I love long form guitar solos over that, and you always know what you're gonna get. Like, the first second of this song, $29, you know it's a long form blues jam. It has that slow patter, and you're like, okay, it's 8 minutes. Fuck. 8 minutes 15, and I'm in this slow, 12-bar blues thing. Like, I don't know how blues fans can just listen to blues all the time, because you are just existing within this paradigm of 12-bar blues. The reason they listen to it is because you're at the mercy of the soloist, really. Like, the songs and the lyrics and the themes are going to be very similar, but your guitar player, your saxophonist, they can do something different here, and they don't. That's the problem with $29. It's not a very good blues song. It's nice to hear Tom on it, but there isn't someone with the authority like a Hendrix or Steve Morse or any of these guys, these really skilled players who can take you on a journey. I think it's Roland Batista. I don't know how many guitar players were featured on this album. Ray Crawford and Alvin Shine Robertson were the other 2 guitar players, so I'm not sure exactly who plays the solos on this. But I think without a really compelling guitar solo at its core, $29 kind of collapses. Like, I like the sludgy rhythms, and there are nice images of this girl. And I think obviously it's quite a long song, so some of the snatches can be lost, but I quite like this. He says, he ain't no good Samaritan. He's going to make sure he's reimbursed a lot more than $29 and an alligator purse.
Pice.
Pice, yeah. And we learn at the end of the song that this, eponymous kind of broad, if you will, to get into Tom Waits vernacular, we learn that she survives. It says, she's lucky to be alive, the doctor whispered to the nurse. She's only lost half a pint of blood, $29, and an alligator puss. So we have that, but yeah, I'm really happy that Tom Waits did this song and then just kind of did permutations of it throughout the album, but then left it. Didn't really arguably Heart Attack and Vine touched on some of the same blues cornerstones, but thankfully with Swordfish he kind of cleans out the attic in that sense.
With these sort of mediocre Tom Waits songs, they're either sort of really bad tracks that kind of prop up him singing well, or him kind of writing something very bleh with a pretty good rhythm. He really has mastered his craft by this album, and besides the standout tracks, he's really risking at this point of just churning out the same kind of stuff, and he's somewhat flogging a bit of a dead horse at this point. There are two very lengthy musical breaks in this.
Yeah,
it's self-indulgent.
It is. But to be fair to him, Blue Valentines recorded pretty much with a new band. So, maybe they wanted to stretch their feet a little bit. Maybe this was a jam that became a song. I mean, I'm not sure of the genesis of it, but you can forgive him for having this. Tom is someone who, as a songwriter, would always associate, the ideas of precision and being laconic and capturing things both lyrically. Yeah, but in the sense of his brevity, he's very witty in the sense of how quick he is and how things just arrive and go. He doesn't dwell on moments. And $29, he's submerged in this song really, and it's just a little bit, it's a bit of a shrug really. Not really a fan of that one.
We are rewarded with him going cuckoo at the end, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, he kind of loses his shit a bit at the end, which is nice. But maybe listen to this one for that. But... yeah,
let's just turn over to side 2.
Yeah.
And turning over to side 2, we have to cross over to
the
Wrong Side of the Road.
Wrong Side of the Road.
This is the lesser road song in the Tom Waits discography, but it's probably unfair to compare anything to something off Mule Variations.
Oh man, Low Side of the Road is... You know what? Sometimes I just think about that song, Low Side of the Road. I adore that song so much, but we have months till we get there, so...
I don't think people appreciate how hard it is not just to ditch whatever album we're talking about and just talk more about Mule Variations.
Just listen to the first 10 seconds of Low Side of the Road, that song. From that little picky banjo to that heavy, squalling guitar is irresistible. And then, the opening lyric of I'm on a black elevator going down. Great opening lyric as well. Wrong Side of the Road. This is a trundling song. I love the way he delivers tracks, but it's a bit nonsensical. Tom's on autopilot here. Really, the rhythm is very similar to $29, which makes it quite annoying for me.
Yeah, it's kind of deliberately, immediately bombastic, and it's kind of annoying for me as he just seems to be trying to push this demented wordsmith persona to the point of self-parody here.
He does go over the top here, and it's
put a dead cat on the railroad tracks. It's oh my god, that is the most it's quintessential thing that someone who is trying to take the mick out of you would try and do. I recently saw a fantastic impression from Rick Moranis in the late 70s doing an impression of George Carlin. And he just shows how formulaic he is becoming, and Tom is doing that to himself here. The only explanation I could possibly have is, have you heard the Paul McCartney song Monkberry Moon Delight off Ram?
I have not, no.
Yeah, it's one of those songs where the lyrics don't actually particularly mean anything, but not in a sort of I Am the Walrus way, but just in the fact that their aural quality and the way the words fit together are chosen for that musical quality. But I think I might be reading too much into that here, and this might just be a little bit of another Heart Attack and Vine bastard.
Yeah, it's just it's kind of we like this Tom. We like lyrical Tom. We like Tom pulling weird images. But I agree with you. I think the writing here is straight up bad. Such as quote, put on a little perfume and wear a ribbon in your hair. Careful that you don't wake up the hounds. Tear a bolt of lightning off the side of the sky. Throw it in the cedar chest if you want to tell me why. It's kind of sixth form nothing lyrics. Tear the throat out of the night is nice, but yeah.
There are some elements that I can't slay. I enjoy the twang of the guitar, and Tom's vocals are as strong as ever. But it's just a shame that it's just propping up fluff.
Yeah, and similar to Red Shoes, we have a long form verse, kind of almost rambling, more positively in Red Shoes, more negatively in Wrong Side of the Road, and then we end with Wrong Side of the Road. Tom singing us out there.
That bit sung well.
Yeah, that bit is good.
And it's like, why couldn't that be like a chorus in a more generic song?
Yeah, it's just. It's a bit of scat as well. I've grown past that, but that comes at the end. But yeah, it's got a groovy promise, if you will. Like I like the mood of it, but again, it's like you have this song or you have $29. I don't know if you have them. Definitely, you don't have one closing aside, one opening aside. I think they're both too weak to do either of those occupations.
Yeah, it's like a weaker middle Bart story, isn't it?
Yes, and there's our Simpson reference, which we try and get in every episode, but that was a very tenuous one. But yes, and then we jump into
a song that is great to talk about as we've just passed Halloween.
That is true.
Yeah, Whistling Past the Graveyard.
Yeah.
Just as a little aside, this is the first mention of the somewhat apocryphal tale of Tom being born in the back of a taxi cab.
Okay.
But the fact that he mentioned it in a song makes me a little bit doubtful.
Yeah.
Now I know my comments about the last song lyrically could almost be applied to this one just as equally, but I think that compared to the rather serious tones displayed in Wrong Side of the Road, it's clear that Tom's being a bit like purposefully playful with a subject matter that's already pretty ridiculous. So that's why this song succeeds more than the last.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean the title in of itself. Here we go, Tom with the apostrophe yet again. He loves to take the G's off the end of words. And so it has that almost spooky aspect to it anyway, kind of almost parodic idea. And like the rhythm is great at the start, those sort of frumps and bumps.
It's instantly enjoyable.
It is really enjoyable. It's a nice throwback, and you have like the kind of almost guitar. The frog like ribbiting and leapfrogging of the guitar in the chorus. It has this kind of weird, like you haven't really heard it in Tom yet, but that sort of guitar playing, that Mark Rebo guitar playing, that's all over Swordfish, all over Mule Variation. So again, we're seeing aspects of later Tom rear their head here. Rhythmically it's interesting. I think he enters a more magic realist world here than in Wrong Side of the Road, which works in its favour. He says, when I get a bit of lonesome and a tear falls from my cheek, there's going to be an ocean in the middle of the week. Whistling past the graveyard, stepping on a crack, me and Mother Hubbard, Papa One-Eye Jack. Actually no, maybe I regret saying that because there are some like weird lyrics near that. Like I love weird, and like weird for the sake of weird can be good, but then Tom goes like, I'm gonna tear me off a rainbow and wear it for a tie, and it's like, okay, well,
yeah,
if you want to.
This song it does feel like the antithesis literally of the last song. If you're gonna make something fluffy, at least make it fun. I'm very much a fan of the phrase bilge water. I don't know what
bilge water's nice,
but the way it resonates in my inner ear is just wonderful. I believe it's either a thin beer or some befouled water at the very bottom of a hard to reach part of a ship's hull.
Yes, it's the where the two sides meet the keel. It's the very bottom of the ship.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and then just the word bilge as well is quite a nice phonetic word to encounter. It's not bad. I mean, Tom almost goes to this semi kind of rhapsodic element towards the end. He kind of like really
and some more hi as well.
Yeah, he kind of like gets in amongst the songs. But as we said in the intro, like $29, Wrong Side of the Road, Whistles Past the Graveyard. These are all cousins. And to put them one after the other as well is a little bit short-sighted, really, because you can just get a bit monotonous as this song whistles down.
And like any family that's too inbred, it sort of weakens the bloodline a bit, and that is what's happening in this album. If I had to pick one thing that I didn't particularly like about this song is it's a pretty wordy chorus, and like you do get pumped up for it, and then it's like whistling past the graveyard. It's like it's not like. It's hard to. It's not sing-alongable in the perfect sense. Like I think it looks better on paper than it does when it's finally sung.
Yeah, it's just.
But it's the energy that is what saves this side of the album. Like we needed this song purely just for attention reasons.
I think this song is like it's a it's a bad Tom Waits song in the sense that it feels like a Tom Waits song, but it's not got quite that intelligence or composition behind it that his best tracks that have this kind of wildness do. Like it is kind of Madman Tom Waits on a weird rhythm, which is kind of the stuff we love. It is very big time, but
it could be another Jam song.
Yeah, it just doesn't have the blood in it. And I think before we get onto a song that is lauded, Kentucky Avenue, it's worth just reminding you that Down in the Hole listeners, if you want to get in contact with us on anything, because I'm aware that some of the opinions you might have on Blue Valentine might cause some dissent, or you might agree, or you might have just new interpretation of the songs that you want to share with us, please get in contact. That's at TomWaitsPodcast on the Twitter, and TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com. So Kentucky Avenue, Sam, this is a big one for some people.
Tom Waits in 1985 said, "Childhood is very important to me as a writer," and that is just this song. It's so nice just to see Tom talking about his own life without, for the most part, as far as I can perceive, that veil that he puts down over himself to sort of create that air of mystique. And I think there are certain images that are so tender and sincere in this song. Like Joey Novinsky said he put the tongue in his mouth. Like, just some of those things are like, okay, that either that's real or he's just so good at artificially creating those weird memory moments that he's one of the greatest songwriters ever.
Yeah, I absolutely love the panoply of children names in this. Eddie Grace, Charlie DeLizzle, Mrs. Storm, Dickie Faulkner, Ronnie Arnold. Like, I love hearing about all these people, and I definitely agree with Barney Hoskins, who rates this song incredibly highly. He says, quote, "This song mourned lost innocence with a compassion that few other songwriters ever attempted, let alone achieved." And that is very true. I do like the recollection element of this song. It reminds me a lot, I don't know about you, but it reminds me a lot of Sight for Sore Eyes. A lot of kind of like nostalgic outpourings that are kind of like, you don't kind of have time to catch your breath. You're just kind of learning about. But unlike that song, Tom is kind of the surrealism of Blue Valentine is kind of leaking into this track, and a lot of it does go into quite weird places, such as, "I'll take the spokes from your wheelchair and a magpie's wings, and I'll tie them to your shoulders and your feet. I'll steal a hacksaw from my dad and cut the braces off your legs, and we'll bury them out tonight in the cornfield." You know what I mean? It's kind of quite abstract in a sense.
I think the sort of fantastical imagery is photographed in the music in such a way that it's almost portraying very accurately and reflecting on the way a child actually remembers things, and the way you remember your own childhood. Like, some of the things are so realistic that you kind of are lulled into thinking that it's all true. But he slips in things like Mrs. Storm, who's sitting on the porch with the 12 gauge, and the freight trains going through the centre of the houses. It sounds like something out of Annie Hall almost.
Yes.
And it is wonderfully Waitsian in that you do kind of have to work out the song and try and break it down and work out for yourself what you think's true and what's not. But I think the important thing is that it's just how the song makes you feel, and it does make me feel like I'm really there. But musically, it kind of is another piano song for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sight for Sore Eyes, I've got a similar opinion. Lyrics fantastic. Love reading these lyrics. Love loads of the lines. Go down to the hobo jungle and kill some rattlesnakes with a trowel. I'll get a trowel. I'll get $1 from my mama's purse and buy that skull and crossbones ring, and you can wear it around your neck on an old piece of string. Lovely. But yeah, the piano is just dribbly Tom Waits piano. Like,
dribbly's a very good word for it.
Melodically, it's in the same space. It's not Closing Time. Tom wouldn't have let this melody get past him, I don't think. But and I know this is kind of sacrilege because loads of people absolutely adore this track, and I know why, but there's nothing melodically that's gripping me here. He's singing the words and he's attributing a certain sense of song to them, but I just think the song would be so much more powerful if it had almost like a Traubert blued refrain, but it doesn't. It's just this kind of long form thing that basically ends with the two characters sliding all the way down to New Orleans for a
New
drain.
Orleans again.
Well, yeah. I actually have to say, by the way, my most sung Tom Waits song to myself, because I've been cycling a lot, and I just sing to myself.
I don't know
when
what it
cycle.
is with this podcast and listening to Tom Waits while cycling, but
yeah. But I sing. I don't listen to music. I will literally just sing out loud.
Really?
On the street. Yeah. Because I live in Oxford at the moment. It's so busy for cyclists, so it's really good. But yeah, I always sing. I wish I was in New Orleans. I don't know why. Something that's such a fun song to sing. And if you want to hear our review of that, check out our Small Change. That's episode 4. Yeah, episode 4. But yeah, Kentucky Avenue. It's lack of a chorus. It's slightly weak piano. It's hard because the lyrics are really affecting and really enjoyable, but as an entire piece, it just doesn't cohere for me.
It's all substance and very little style.
That's very true. But Sweet Little Bullet is neither.
Sweet Little Bullet. I am struggling to find things to say about this song.
Yeah.
Like the moment he said it's raining and it's pouring, I was like, Tom, can you just leave nursery rhymes alone now?
Yeah.
I don't know why, but this song really reminds me of Satisfaction off the Bad As Me album.
Yes. Yeah, it's very similar to $29 as well.
Yeah.
It's got that same, but yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's very similar to that. There was I agree. Song wise, this isn't a good song. Don't like this song. Never gonna listen to this song really again from choice after this podcast because it's cut from the same cloth. Yeah, so many other songs. But I've been reading a few interviews around the same time. This is quite an interesting interview that Tom says about this song. This is an interview with Greg Linder, titled "Little Murders." And it's
this is a weird story. This is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's November 17th, 1978. He says, quote, I can't write about dear baby I love you and everything's going to be alright because we're going to get married. It's presenting problems in my personal life as well. I've developed a more and more grim attitude. I've got a song on the new album called Sweet Little Bullet from a Pretty Blue Gun. It's about a suicide in Hollywood Boulevard. About a year ago, this 15-year-old girl jumped out a 17th floor window with a guitar. That never made Crawdaddy magazine. You never hear those stories. So it's Tom yet again, as is Blue Valentine's prerogative almost. It's him casting light on those that are crushed down by the city and dreams and that, but it's just not got much of a skill to the actual composition, I don't think.
Yeah, it's one of those like hodgepodge pieces. Like we've already said, it's raining, it's pouring. We've got Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, the prayer, and also the Harry Belafonte poem Scarlet Letters makes a little reference. It's just it exists contextually. It's more hints of this rhythmic weight that we're slowly moving towards. That weirdly gets stunted somewhat by the next album. Like it like you would have thought it would go from Blue Valentines to Swordfish more likely.
You would, yeah, you definitely would.
But yeah, this song is. I like it until he starts singing, which is very early on.
Yeah, he sings for a lot of it as well. There isn't the instrumental breaks that are in some of these songs. It's just not like there's a nice clear sax line that sort of takes us out, but I
think the band just need to. You know what? It might not even be the band aren't working together now. Tommy's just becoming more like I'm more of a film guy, so I use the word auteur more. But obviously, if you are becoming that more confident, then the additions of other people, if you're not going to even like consider them, they're never going to arrive anyway. So. Like a lot of the things that we liked, especially about Nighthawks at the Diner, was the other players playing their part. And obviously, the more we become just Tom Waits with the occasional sort of Keith Richards cameo, we are going to lose that band feeling now.
Yeah, and I think that's good. But you have these songs like this are kind of those. It's the shedding of the skin. This isn't who Tom needs to be anymore, and I think he knows that.
But it's not in that cool way a snake does. It's that weird tarantula thing where it's
yeah. So we close up. Yeah, again, by the way,
with a titular track.
But again, a titular track that messes up the plural. So the last album was Foreign Affairs, which closes with Foreign Affair.
This is such a British problem.
No, but it's just like, it's weird. And then you have the next album after that is we're doing Blue Valentine, and then the song that closes it is Blue Valentines. It's like, what? Like,
He's doing it to mess with people like you specifically, I think.
Yeah, I'm really happy that Heart Attack and Vine starts with Heart Attack and Vine. That is just, you know what I mean? Because if it ended with Heart Attack and Vines, couldn't deal with that. But
there's a small part of me that is worried that one day we do get Tom on the podcast,
right?
And you just are fixated on this grammar thing.
Oh my god, that would be incredible. Yeah. I'd have nothing to say. There'd be nothing that I say that he would find interesting. Literally nothing. There would be no opinion that I had on his music or otherwise. I just feel that I would be absolute flan in that man's presence.
I'd just speak about his roles in At Home in the Fields of the Lord. Just pick something nice and obscure. The opening guitar to this song is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The solo is not. It's not the strongest point in his career at this age. I think that's why, as you mentioned on our Twitter page the other day at TomWaitsPodcast, this is why he will hire great guitarists like Keith Richards.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun to hear Tom singing with two guitars, which we've never really heard before. Definitely not a slow song. I mean, this sort of song traditionally in Tom's kind of output so far would have been on piano, him and piano.
And it's not a very traditional guitar sound either. It's very
it's very heavily arpeggios, little chromatic runs here and there. The guitars behave interestingly. It's not just a consequence of chords. There's some nice little riffing ideas going on. The problem is structure, really. If you compare this song to others, it's quite repetitive.
It's a very standard song, isn't it?
It is it's a number. It's a Tim Pally kind of. You could buy this song and do it for another thing. There are nice moments. It's the ghost in your memory, baby. It's the thistle in your kiss. I like that.
I don't know. Again, there is no twist, no gag, no gimmick, no image to make it like a distinct Tom tale. But maybe when you are writing the bog standard blues, it's hard to avoid convention.
It is. I don't know about that though. I quite like the idea. The song's called Blue Valentines because the idea is that someone is sending him blue Valentines on the abstract anniversary of someone that he used to be, which is so Tom. Mm-hmm. You're getting flowers to mark the commemoration of something you aren't, which is great. And that's a very noirish thing. You can definitely imagine that happening in Raymond Chandler novels. Someone being kind of some femme fatale sending flowers on some weird date or something, and that's nice. And Tom sings well, delivery's excellent.
It's one of his non-shouty voices, which I always appreciate. One of the things that I do like on this album, just to mention, is the juxtaposition between the colours blue and red, because it is just such a dichotomy. And it kind of mirrors the sort of clash of style he's really going for on this album, because obviously we've kind of got 1 foot a bit in Foreign Affairs, and we've got 1 foot a bit in Heart Attack and Vine here. I really feel like this ending song really could have felt very, very much at home on something like Small Change. But yeah, it is just another one of those movie songs. Tom in 2004 said, "I think I was just making movies for the ears, writing them, directing them, releasing them, kind of making a fiction in a non-fiction world."
Nice.
Yeah, but he also says, "But I still like that Blue Valentine song. Still play it sometimes. Someone asked me to play it at a wedding recently."
Yeah, I can see people really enjoying it, but I think you're right. It doesn't really feel like a Tom Waits track. It feels like a noirish, bluey track.
He's quoted again as saying it was overly maudlin, romantic, and I hadn't really grown up. And I think that's the man summed it up better himself. So,
well, I think that is
that
Blue Valentine. That is the end of Blue Valentine. Now we've
phew.
Yeah, there we go. Just to quickly sum up, I suppose, Blue Valentine in a word or so. I think it's very encouraging. As someone who's listened to Tom Waits chronologically, it shows that he's developing and introducing new instruments and new compositional ideas, and his voice is there pretty much, isn't it? I mean, his voice will get different and more raspy, but he's definitely developed an edge to it that's really fun to listen to. It's just this song, this album, just runs out of imagination. Really, he's probably been running on empty for a while now. He needs to be recharged in some way, as we see. Obviously, he is through Kathleen and subsequent adventures they go on. But for now, really strong start. Opening 4 songs, I'd say, are really good. And then $29, as you say, slides us into a bit more of a mess.
Yeah, I do. I do feel like Tom is really being the character from Step Right Up here. He's given us, 4 great ones at the start, kind of trick us into this album. Like if you did buy an album for some reason on a song by song basis, you would feel rather slighted. But it's not a bad album by any stretch of the imagination. It's not. Like you say, that there are those movements, but it's only really when you look back that you can see there was really that much of a change. He's not making massive leaps, except for maybe, as you say, swapping up his arrangements. But going back to it, it's nowhere near as unforgettable as I might have thought it was.
And I will stand by what I said. Foreign Affairs is better than Blue Valentine.
You are going to stand by that.
I genuinely think it is. Yeah, I genuinely do.
See, just the mere presence of the song with Bette Midler, "I Don't Talk to Strangers," just totally, it's like, just burn it, just burn every.
I'd like to hear what people think on this. So if you can get in contact with us.
Well, if you're with Team Sam.
Yeah, so just I'll put it on the Twitter as well afterwards at TomWaitsPodcast on Twitter, Blue Valentine or Foreign Affairs. So one of the new things that we're going to do, we always do kind of little things after review albums. We've got the film review coming up very soon. We're going to do our favourite lines, our favourite bits of lyrics. Shall I go first, or do you want to go first?
Yeah, go on, man.
My first favourite line, we're going to do 3. These are no particular order. Is from Christmas Card. I really like the final line. Really, hey Charlie, for Christ's sake, if you want to know the truth of it, I don't have a husband. He don't play the trombone, and I need to borrow money to pay this lawyer. I love that lyric. I also love the one of the later areas of $29. I mentioned this prior. She's lucky to be alive. The doctor whispered to the nurse. She's only lost half a pint of blood. $29 and an alligator purse. And my favourite, this is my favourite line. I really like the burglar alarm snitching on Caesar. That has always stuck with me.
My favourite line, purely just because it is immediately Tom Waits, is just the hound splashed the nickel full of soldiers. Just things like that. I'm struggling to come with any examples that aren't off Red Shoes. Yeah. Santa Claus is drunk in the ski room.
Yeah.
Although
Santa Claus is drunk.
When you said you liked the last line off Christmas Card, to me, oddly enough, it is the opening line.
Yeah.
Charlie, I'm pregnant. Like I've been reading a lot of books on screenwriting at the moment, and one of the things they say to capture an audience is to be primal, and just like that is such a primal opening, like that just grabs you in such a scary way that you have to be immediately invested. Like any man who would read that, it's serious.
Well, it's just if you push that idea forward, so it's hey Charlie, I'm pregnant, living on Ninth Avenue, right above a dirty bookstore. I stopped taking dope and I quit drinking whiskey. Like it's just so much character there.
For my official favourite line, I will have to go for the rain washes the memories from the sidewalks and the hound splashed the nickel for the soldiers.
And as we always do as well, Sam, we always do our favourite and least favourite songs. So your least favourite song of Blue Valentine, please.
Least favourite song off Blue Valentines will probably have
Richard
to
Pickens.
be. I'm going to be nice and fair, not be controversial. A sweet little bullet from a pretty blue gun. I don't want to anger any of our fans. My favourite song. Oh, we're going to do your least favourite now.
We'll just do it quickly. Quite obviously, $29. Really don't like.
Oh, really? You'd actually put that below?
Wrong Side of the Road.
Yeah.
They're twins. They're twins.
Yeah.
So your favourite?
Oh, the favourite's got to be Romeo Is Bleeding. I know. I really didn't champion it last week with the sort of same enthusiasm that I did with like Burma Shave, but it's like whenever I go through my Spotify, I'll normally pick one song off that I'll probably put onto my actual stuff that I listen to, and that was definitely the one. Just before you mention your favourite, something I would like to mention, speaking of Spotify, is that we are going to be launching the playlist that we've essentially been kind of cultivating over the last 6 episodes. So both of our favourites will be going onto a playlist on Spotify. It's public, and it will literally just be called the Tom Waits Podcast playlist. And you'll just be able to, track along with us.
Yeah.
What will ultimately be, once we finally get to Bad As Me and Glitter and Doob and all that lot, will be the official, what we hope will be the official list to probably get anyone into Tom Waits or just his best collection of songs.
Yeah, effectively, it's a reflection of what this podcast's tastes are in Tom. Because obviously, a million different Tom Waits podcasts could
And
go
it's
going to
be weird though when we go back and see what didn't make it.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, because inevitably there's going to be so many tough decisions to make, especially in the later albums. Like Mule Variations, again, bringing that up.
No.
There's about eight or nine songs on that I love equally so much. But yeah, Chris.
I hope we don't leave Take It With Me behind. I hope we don't.
Pony's better than Take It With Me. But
Georgia Lee.
So. Georgia Lee's okay. House Where No One Lives better than Georgia Lee. Yeah, my favourite Christmas card could be Red Shoes, but I think Christmas card is one of Tom's best kind of just total pieces of work, from the music to the singing to the idea to the execution to the fact that it's just him on this piano. So it's Tom on piano, but it's a little different. It's electric piano, and it's Tom singing about heartbreak, but it's he's being a pregnant hooker, or at least incorporating one. Quite explicitly. So that was Blue Valentine.
What's probably my favourite feature, which is
we still don't have a name for this feature, which is quite annoying. We're 6 episodes in now. This is where we look at a Tom Waits film every week. And today we're looking at Rumblefish by Francis Ford Coppola. But we need a name.
What we would like?
What can we call it?
Like, we are big fans of puns. And we'd like either an album title or a very famous lyric or a song title to be somehow turned into a film review title. Such a Screen was one of the original ones, wasn't it?
Such a Screen. What's he filming in there? These are all bad. We know they're bad.
But when you sense a pun, you know it's there, and you know it's going to be somewhere in the category somewhere. But let's talk about Rumblefish.
Yeah, tell me about Rumblefish, Sam.
Time is a funny thing. Time is a very peculiar item. You see, when you're young, you're a kid, you got time. You got nothing but time. Throw away a couple of years here, a couple of years there. It doesn't matter. You know. The older you get, you say, Jesus, how much I got? I got 35 summers left. Think about it. 35 summers.
I forgot how much I actually like Francis Ford Coppola because of this podcast. It's gone a long way into sort of healing a lot of the damage done by things like Godfather 3 and Twixt with Elle Fanning and Jack. Good lord. Visually, this film is very arresting. There are loads of great Dutch angles on display. There were.
What do you mean Dutch angle?
A Dutch angle is kind of like a kilted angle askew to the side, and it shows that something's not completely right, or the frame of the character's mind is a bit askew, literally.
So sorry. Just go through what's the story of this film? Sorry, just so people can.
Yes, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
It's all right.
Rumblefish. It's kind of it's a very typically Tom Waits story.
Incredibly.
It's based on a book, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
I believe it is based on a book, because it's the same author who wrote the book that Francis Ford Coppola's last film was as well. But essentially, it's about Rusty James, and his name is spoken like 1,000 times in this movie.
Yeah, he's basically Matt Dillon plays Rusty James, a kind of greaser, kind of biker kid who, it's all about gang warfare between teens. Has an incredible cast.
Yeah, like it's like, whoa, this is where a lot of people started off.
It's one of those films where it's like, this was when in the prime of their career. So you have not only Tom Waits, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, you have Lawrence Fishburne, Nicolas Cage, a very young Nicolas Cage, Matt Dillon, Mickey Rourke, Dennis Hopper. So many heavyweights, and basically it's all about the futility of these gang warfare. It's black and white. It's heavily stylized. Mickey Rourke's Matt Dillon's older, gang brother who has this reputation that he kind of wants to get under the shadow of. So that's sort of world.
There's the tagline for the movie is really great on the poster. It's like, Rusty James will never live up to his brother's life. His brother will never live it down. And that pretty much sums it up. One thing that did strike me was a young Matt Dillon does look like contemporary James Franco. And I had to remind myself several times that it's not. And Mickey Rourke was also doing his best Bruce Willis, like sort of whispering impression.
I'm a huge Mickey Rourke fan, and I think he was.
You're a big wrestler champion, aren't you?
Huge fan of the wrestler.
You're not a big wrestling champion, though.
No, I'm not. it's kind of like this world has been explored much, you know, in film. Think of stuff like The Wild One and Rebel Without a Cause, Warriors, Easy Rider, The Outsiders. We could keep going forever, really.
Young teen gangs,
young teen gangs, and it was very enjoyable. It's got a slowness to it. It's got a weird pace to it. It's not really doesn't really pulsate with the violence in it. And it's probably worth saying as well that Tom himself. Again, we need to start picking these films better because every film we've picked so far, Tom's
for the first scene,
he steals the film, but he doesn't really focus on it much. But talk to me about Tom.
Hoskins describes his character as a bit of an idiot savant muttering to himself, and that makes me think that Tom will be perfect for this role. Then basically,
yes.
I know that he wrote a lot of his own dialogue, which is. Like it stand out in the film, it feels like it's from somewhere else, and like the character of Benny, this guy who owns this seedy little street calf, is just it is him, and it's great. I did think that it was very typical that Tom is in a film that both glorifies California and this sort of gang life, but it's a shame that in a film inhabited solely by street rats and drunks that we don't see him drink or stand on a street once.
He's entirely behind this coffee shop bar. It's great to see him there. He looks great, what he's wearing, and it's really fun to see him operate as what does he always write about? He always writes about coffee bars and what people see there, and there he is behind the counter.
It is rather like Ironweed in that sense, where like nothing's really happening in the plot. Like there's always these great other things happening in the frame from the main focal point, which gives the whole film a very lived-in and real feel. But it is just one of those vicarious insights into the lives of characters, in a day in the life, essentially again. I think Tom is drawn to these narratives where there's no sort of overarching grand scheme.
No, I think we've watched. How many films? Watched 4 now. I believe. We've watched Ironweed, It Plays in the Field of the Lord. Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Well, this is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Actually, yes, this is our 4th one.
This is our 4th one. Yeah.
There are again. There's 2 kind of scenes that kind of stand out as being really awesome, and the rest is kind of very, very good. But obviously, there are 2 parts. One where the rival gang, who aren't thankfully the main antagonists of the screenplay, the real villains are things like substance abuse and poor families and hero worship, which is something that I've always found fascinating. But when the gang appear with the smoke behind them and the violent screech of the train, it just preempts the assault on our heroes, and and Mickey Rourke ends the fight by driving a motorcycle into a guy. It's awesome.
It is ridiculous. Yeah, it's really good. It reminded me a little bit, and I don't mean to downplay it, but it reminded me a little bit of the video for Bad, Michael Jackson's Bad, where it's just these 2 kind of handsome gangs facing off in some
and
parking
Beat
lot.
It as well.
Obviously, it's a great movie. It's maybe not the most compelling narrative, and it won't grip you.
I've watched it twice. I've watched it.
It's fun, and it's stylishly made as well. This is back in the early '80s when films had a lot of money, and these are lots of great actors that are really young. Chris Penn's in it as well, I believe.
Before he kind of disappeared after Reservoir Dogs.
Is he related to Sean Penn?
Yeah, brothers.
Are they brothers?
Do you think the whole film being in black and white and Motorcycle Boy, Mickey Rourke's character, being colourblind is a little conceited?
Interesting. Didn't really consider that. Yeah, it's I think we'll just close it out with. You should watch this film, by the way.
Yeah, please do. There is a killer out of body experience sequence that you should really watch out for.
And there's a nice quote that I noted down by Benny, who is Tom Waits' character. Rusty James, the main guy, Matt Dillon, asks him, "How do you know when someone's crazy?" And he says, "Well, you don't always. It depends on how many people think they're crazy," which I quite liked as well. It's a nice sort of summary for Tom's kind of not Tom as a whole, but you know what I'm saying, the kind of dichotomy that he's going for.
Without sort of weird rating systems, it's a definite recommendation from us.
It's the best one we've watched
Easily.
so far. We've watched 4 Tom Waits films now, and this is easily the best. Bram Stoker probably had better moments, but I think as an entire piece of work, Rumblefish is more interesting, and by the same director as well, which is
it features
crazy.
Something in American films that is kind of a bit of a trope, and it always makes me laugh. The trope of the Catholic schoolgirls being absolutely promiscuous, and I can attest to this because as a bit of backstory to us, we actually attended a Catholic school. and
We did.
Not that we're exactly practicing now. And
No.
but this is just from my angle and my opinion. There was a severe lack of promiscuity in these
That's true.
schools, and I do not remember that at all. Or
That's
maybe
true.
that's just
True.
their reaction to me.
No one rumbled off fish, which was
the fish
terrible.
are also very good in this film, actually.
Yes, yeah. So with that, thank you so much for listening. That is the end of episode 6, our Blue Valentine review. Please, as ever, get in contact with us through the Twitter at TomWaitsPodcast. Also, email us. Always great to hear from emails. Happy to read them out. Happy to get back in touch.
Please
as well.
rate us on iTunes. Visit our
iTunes,
website as well, TomWaitsPodcast.wordpress.com,
yeah, we've got a blog.
where we just kind of post stuff about the episodes. We do
Yeah.
plan to start putting more content, original content, up on there soon as well.
Definitely. I was saying this to Sam earlier, like in the week. I want to, as we cover as we get into the later albums where we've covered most of his music, I want to start compiling like specific playlists. So like maybe Tom Waits Night playlist, or the best Tom Waits songs about women,
Yeah.
or the weirdest instruments in Tom. Maybe just like 8 tracks.
If anyone out there
nothing
has
serious,
any
but-
ideas for potential really fun playlist
yeah,
ideas,
or just
please,
send them in. Yeah. We'd love to, any playlist ideas at TomWaitsPodcast, TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com. But yeah, that's it for us. I've been Tom.
I've been Sam.
And next week, or next, sorry,
It's every second and fourth Thursday. We
every second and fourth Thursday, yeah.
and next fortnight.
Next fortnight, over the next 2 weeks, Sam, we shall be listening to and making notes on Heart Attack and Vine.
Which famously is the favourite album of our old English teacher.
For some reason.
It's the only one she heard. It's the only one she ever listened to. She heard nothing else.
Well, thank you so much for listening, everyone. We've been down in the hole, and you've been great, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Ta-ra.
See you later. Bye.
Let's talk about your voice. Do you ever have problems with your throat? Do you go to a throat doctor? Do you have a...
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because I did go to a throat doctor for the very first time here in New York. And I told him I want to get it lower. And
You wanted to lower your
I
voice?
don't care how much it costs. Bring it down. It's embarrassing. Actually, it's Frank Sinatra's throat doctor, so I felt safe. I was in good hands.
I would think so, sure.
So I'm on steroids. If I seem a little, edgy,
Now, you're not on steroids. Now, don't be joking like that.
No, but it was. He's a good doctor.
What kind of hints does he give for throat care to you?
You see, you can't go on singing like that. He said, you're gonna wind up like Frank Sinatra. I said, you mean rich and powerful?
That's kind of the point, isn't it?
Yeah. No, he said he could sing like Tony Bennett if he'd listen to me.
Speaking of singing, what are we going to hear tonight here?